Thank you.
Folks. And hey, James. Welcome. Looks like he's muted too. Yeah, James, you are muted. If you were. And Jim Brown, you're not muted. I can see you muting and everybody muting and unmuting.
Yes, that is me. I was muting just to ensure that I knew how the system worked, but I'm leaving it up just because for the first few moments, I'd like everyone to just, for those who don't know each other on the call, introduce themselves and say who they are with before we turn the table over to you.
Wonderful. All right, and I'm seeing 8:36 now, so we could start that, do some introductions, and then I could shoot for starting at about 1:40.
Okay. Thank you, Matt, for your assistance, and I'm glad that we waited a few moments and let some extra folks call in. So I already did offer some welcome and thanks for those who did call in. This is a large conversation, really an international topic. And so having everyone, approaching this regionally from as educated a perspective as we can and as collaborated a perspective as we can, the more we can share resources and move forward and keep our programs strong here in West Michigan. So a few logistics, we will be keeping the lines muted while Matt gives his presentation, just ensuring that he has time to move through all of his content and can really give us some good background information for discussion. And then we'll move into the more interactive piece, the discussion. This is our goal, is to have a lot of conversation around this topic. So please be ready with questions, be ready to participate, and you can also type them into the chat as we go, just so that you can ensure you don't forget if that is a good system for you. And we will go from there. So I know that our industry has a lot of different sectors that have a role in this conversation, and it can get broad pretty quickly. So I know we have collectors, we have educators, and I believe hopefully we'll have at least a processor on the call, so we can really talk about all of our roles in this and some of the roles that aren't being represented here, and how we can each individually provide value. So let's go ahead and move through introductions. And in order to do this in a somewhat organized fashion, what I'll do is I'll just I'll state a county, and if you are representative of that county, just go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll also do the same for just general organizations and nonprofits. So is there anyone from a general organization or a nonprofit on the call? All right, well, maybe Erin is having some issues with her line, but we do have Erin Kuhn here. She is with the West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission.
There she is. She just put a note in there saying her microphone's not working on her computer. Hi, Erin.
Oh, okay. There we go. All right, Allegan County.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Graham, the coordinator.
Hi, Rosemary. Thanks for joining. Berry County.
Jim Brown, Hastings Charter Township.
Afternoon. Berrien County.
Yes, hi, this is Jill from Berrien.
Hi, Jill. Kent County.
Dar with Kent County, Director of Public Works.
Hi, Dar.
James Third, City of Grand Rapids.
Hi, James. Do we have anyone from Ionia on the line? Muskegon? Carly is with us from Muskegon. She also has some microphone logistical issues. Newaygo County? All right, well, it looks like we have Dale Twing with Newaygo County and Van Buren. Okay, anyone else that I missed? All right, with introductions being done, I am going to mute.
Katie, it's Sarah Kelly and Calhoun. I'm on.
Oh, hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining. Okay, with that being stated, I am going to go ahead and mute everyone.
All right. I don't know if you can hear me. Should I go ahead and start? Because maybe you muted everyone. I'm not sure if I'm able to be heard right now. Somebody needs to give me the heads up go sign.
You're on.
Okay.
Should be good.
Okay. Very good. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It looks like some of us, this is our first go-to meeting. So if you are interested in calling in, there's a phone number you can call in when you're logged in. If you want to join the discussion, it'll come through on the computer. My name is Matt Flechter. I'm with the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. I know many of you. Some are some new names, so I look forward to meeting you in person. I'm the market development specialist. I've been watching this China issue starting to build since about last March. And it seems like there's some new developments every day. There have been a lot of comments, a lot of people from the National Recycling Coalition, from ISRI, from the Michigan Recycling Coalition. Others have vocalized concerns, and also the press has been reaching out to people like me and Katie and others, wondering what's going on and how this is affecting our programs. So I want to dive into what I know, some of my takeaways from what we're noticing around this state and what I'm hearing from around the country, how to address some of them, and then also open it up afterward to see what type of comments all of you have, because you may be experiencing something newer or different that I wouldn't have heard of yet. So things are developing relatively rapidly with this. So there may be some new information that someone on this call has that I'll be able to learn from you as well. So Katie, let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. There we go. Look at that. So it's kind of annoying to hear, but there are some silver linings that are coming from this. Even though we do know that there's some serious depression in the market prices that our recycling programs are receiving. There are some things that are happening that are ultimately going to make our recycling program stronger, and I believe that this is the necessary wake-up call that many of our programs have needed across the country anyway. Michigan's been doing pretty good. I think there's a lot to say that some of the stories that we tell right now are really being listened to across the country, because we have organized ourselves in a way to weather the storm a little bit better than maybe some states along the coast, or some states that haven't really put the effort in that we've been putting in recently, as far as quality and end-use markets, those two items. Ultimately, quality should always be the highest priority, and that is because we're making products. We're not just getting rid of trash, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then when I was checking in with some materials recovery facility managers, so the recycling facility managers around the state, I asked why it doesn't seem to be hitting them as hard as what I'm hearing in other states, whether it's Florida or New Jersey or California, where the majority of the material is going out of country, really. And so the MRF operators were telling me that it's about their strong relationships that they have, the networks that they've built, the trust that they have with their end-use markets, and the communication back to make sure that those materials, whether they are going to China or not, are meeting the specifications of the next step in the chain. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Where is it? There it is. I can see you moving, trying to get the little cue forward. So I'm going to start out with something that I was thinking about recently, about why Michigan is able to weather the storm a little bit better. And this is obviously before I've gotten into what this storm is and what's being caused, but I want to set the stage in the right spot that there are a lot of really important end-use markets that keep our recycling program successful in the Midwest and in Michigan. And there's been some interesting and important growth happening in those end-use markets that are making it so that at the very least the prices aren't dropping as much as they should, or will likely start returning northward in the near future. Probably not on the mixed plastics, which is the first one, but on the paper recycling, I'm relatively confident that that this is just a dip in the pricing that we're getting, and it's going to climb back up based on some information that I'm receiving about development in these markets. But first, let me talk about Revital Polymers. Revital Polymers had their grand opening. They've been operating for a while, and they were the old Intropex, but now they've got a partnership and with Imterra, and they are processing mixed plastics, and a lot of our communities and collection programs are sending their mixed plastics there. I'll tell you, this China issue would be very different if we did not have end-use markets such as that. Michigan is Michigan, the region right around here. Obviously, this is in Sarnia. Is a net importer of recycled materials, whether it's paper, metal, glass, or plastic. We've got some major processors, so that's something we can be proud of, and we need to see more, even more development, because there's not a market, or you're not really recycling until the material makes its way into a new product, as so many of us on this call know. And so our partners at Revital Polymers or Pratt Industries are really helping us weather the storm by investing real dollars in creating end-use markets. So the other one, Pratt, they just recently announced last month a new site in Ohio, and they will be doubling their capacity that they currently have. When that plant goes online, they're going to be taking in double the amount of mixed paper and corrugated cardboard, and it's going to help our mixed paper end-use markets. You know, ultimately, it's going to help everybody else too that can't send that mixed paper overseas. However, what's happening is it's good news for Pratt, because everybody's starting to invest in cleaning up those streams so that they meet the specifications, and ultimately they're going to be able to process that material a little bit cheaper. So let's move to the next slide. We can come back and talk about those two after I'm finished here. So markets, overall commodity pricing, the mixed bale pricing is definitely down. Paper is down. There are still very challenging materials like glass and organics and plastic film. And this roller coaster will not end, and it's not because of China. China is just exacerbating the problem right now. But ultimately, anybody that's been in this business for a while knows that the price of markets go up and down, and recycling market commodity prices are not a strong indicator of really the health of the industry. We've got end users that are still looking for those materials in it, and a lot of the commodities really aren't as dependent on it's a global market. So I guess what I'm saying is, even if we have strong markets for paper and and mixed plastic and other materials. This commodities prices are still going to go up and down. What's happening right now with Pratt and Vital Polymers is it's lessening the amount that it's going up and down. And we can talk about a little bit more about that as well to see what your specific, what your experiences have been. So let's move to the next slide. So let's get into the reason why we're having this call. What is National Sword? So it's really a couple of different parts. One is the challenges of import licenses not being renewed, and it's also putting a specification on the material that's coming in of right now 0.5% of contamination of non-recycled, so the mixed loads, and they are starting to reject loads. And this is there are a lot of reasons for this, and let's get into that. Next slide. Oh, let me say this first. The inspections of plastics, there are inspections of plastics recycling facilities, particularly over in China by their government, and they had significant rule violations, and they're closing and suspending operations. And these are really small plastics processing businesses. So they're really only, they're not the large facilities even anywhere close to like what I was just talking about with Vital Polymers in Sarnia. And so a lot of the material is being processed in small facilities that just do not have environmental controls or safety controls, and they are doing their best to shift that and modernize their plastics recycling industry. And the way they're doing that is pushing on the quality of the material coming in. So next slide. So there was a scrap ban. There was a notice last summer, and there were 4 classes and 4 kinds of scrap that had to be meet these specifications. All plastics, unsorted, mixed paper, textiles, some glass, and metals. So they went in and said, I guess I have to say this, and it's probably not a good thing, but they've been sending these signals for a while, and it's just within the past few months, maybe less than that, I'd say a few weeks, 6 weeks or so, that the national press has started picking up on this. I thank you, Katie, for sending those articles there. I thought NPR has done one, CNN. The good thing is a lot of us in the industry have seen this coming, and I would say because they did the green fence a few years ago, we knew they were real. We knew that this was going to happen. So a lot of the materials recovery facilities have started adding people, slowing down the line, really ultimately increasing their costs, which is an important component of this. Not only are the prices down, but the costs for processing the material is going up, and that does telegraph into the local programs and how local programs are managing or the costs are associated with running a local program. So let's do the next slide. So why is this happening right now? And it's like the green fence in 2013. It's stemmed from really the media, and this is a political issue. Let's do the next slide. A couple months ago, Xi Jinping was being nominated to head the party and head the country. And in his speech, he had 89 mentions of the environment and just 70 of the economy, which, can you imagine? I mean, that's just, that tells me right there that this is very important to the Chinese people, that they are working to address these issues that, frankly, we have known about for many, many years. We've been, as the shift to single stream has happened, more and more contamination has been shoved in the bale, and as many of you know on this call, there's a term called dressing the bale. You go up and you look at the bale and you pull off the plastic or a little chunk of metal or whatever else is sticking out of it. you send it on and you make your bales look pretty, and that contamination is still inside. They break them open. Where's it going? How's it being managed? And there is a cost dynamic. The faster you run your line, the more profit you make, the more contamination in, and it's somebody else's problem. It's happened all over the country. Now that's coming home to roost. Now we've got to make sure that we have cleaner material coming out of the MRFs, but more importantly, as I'll get to in a minute, more cleaner material going into the MRFs as well. And that's something we can all work on together as a group here. So let's go on to the next slide. Why is it important? Really, about 30% of all recyclables collected in the United States are exported outside of the US. I don't have any Michigan specific numbers. I really like to know that. We're just finally starting to get a handle on recycling measurement and how much is generated. So maybe that'll be a dream of mine to start looking at those types of numbers and thinking about the strength of our local end use markets, because I truly believe that we are way under 30% of our recyclables are going outside the US. But that doesn't mean that let's say something from New Jersey or California or Oregon or Orlando, Florida, they used to just bale it up, put it on containers and ship it to China. They'd sort it there. If they're not collecting that material, where is that material from Portland or Orlando going? It's gonna squeeze into the markets that we've been reliant on, which depresses the prices because there's an increased amount of material. So Hong Kong and China account for about 69% of all U.S. exports for plastics, other than number one, PET. So it's not only that a lot are exported, a lot of them are exported to China. The next slide.
No, I'm muted.
No, you're not muted. Whoever just said that, hi there.
Sorry about that.
No problem. I don't know who that was, but let's see. How are we doing on time?
I don't like Jane.
Let me speed this up here a little bit. So the impact of National Sword. So its prohibitive content for all fiber grades will now be 1% down from 2%. So there's been this battle between, this negotiations that have taken place that are trying to set a target. I mean, ideally it should be 2%. They're forcing the market to clean it up, and they're sending those signals. I think this also has to do with more than just the 2% threshold, but it's that they're actually enforcing this. Because I would say 2% is even hard to get. I mean, if you break a bale, I mean, all of the cleanest MRFs would be, and the slowest MRFs, the one that the most technology, are going to have trouble getting to that standard. So now they're making it even more difficult. So that prohibited content for plastics will stay at 5% at 0.5%, and the prohibited content for ferrous and non-ferrous metals will be at 1%. So essentially what this means is they are checking at the border, and I'll say, let's go to the next slide and see how we're doing there. But I've been talking with a couple of MRFs around the state that have had their importers. What they've started doing last spring is their importers would send inspectors to the materials recovery facilities, break open bales, do moisture content testing, and check that the Michigan materials recovery facilities that are exporting to China are meeting that specification. And so far, we have had no one report, to me anyway, that there has been any Michigan bales that have been stopped at the border. I'd love to hear if that's not the case, so I can stop saying that if that's not true. But I have not heard of material being stopped, at least from the traditional curbside through the materials recovery facilities. I do wonder if there have been any scrap from the scrap industry. So if anybody knows that, I'd like to hear about it. Maybe you can ask around, because I'd like to be able to continue to tell the story that we haven't had any loads delayed or stopped because of National Sword. So why does it matter? China consumes about 55% of the world's scrap paper. 2016, about 37 million tons of recyclables went outside the U.S. and 44% of them were to China. And 13 million tons of scrap paper went to China in 2016. So these are ISRI stats, and they have been very vocal and very nervous about this from the beginning because of their reliance on the export market. I also want to say this: they consume 55% of the world's scrap paper, which it's not like you're going to turn that off overnight. So this has been an interesting conversation over the past few months, is no matter what the Chinese government does, there is a strong need to find paper. And this is what's so interesting to me. Let's go to the next slide and see if I cover it there. Yeah, I'm going to cover it here, but it's not. So I say China needs the material. However, they are hoping to drive up the prices of domestic materials so that they were able to stop this at the border. I mean, imagine this. What if all of a sudden Michigan, hypothetically, had some ability to shut down all imports of steel and paper to our industries in Michigan? The price for the stuff that we have domestically would skyrocket. And think about what that would do to James Hurt's budget in Grand Rapids. All of a sudden they're getting 10 times the value of commodity value for their mixed bales because of the economics. And what could they do? They could use that money to start growing their recycling program. And it's all hypothetical. They grow the recycling program, they do education to clean up the stream, they add more bins. That's exactly what's happening in China. So as they cap this off, it makes the domestic material so much more expensive, the commodity value, because the paper markets need it. And so what that's doing is having them grow and put capital into their domestic recycling programs. So this kind of hit me a few months ago, but oh my gosh, they're doing what we've been trying to do in Michigan, is make sure that we are supplying our end-use markets with domestically sourced material. Instead of sending our material from Hastings or somewhere to a landfill, we're going to send it from Hastings to the Ford plant to make new cars. That's the goal. We want to make sure that we're using our materials in the best way possible. Well, that's what China's doing, but they're using all type of communist and techniques for managing the flow of material that they can do, which is helping them grow their programs and causing us some trouble. So long term, what's going to happen when all those communities have recycling programs and are feeding those domestic markets? So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so our partners at the Recycling Partnership have 6 main steps, and I want to focus on 3 of them. This is how you and your program can manage this issue with National Sword, and how you can maintain your program as these changes happen. The first one I've already mentioned: clean up your recycling stream, making sure that you are educating your programs about the importance of having clean materials. Use this as a talking point. Hey, no longer will the end-use markets allow you to put your rope in the recycling stream, but don't do it in a way that's going to scare people and say, oh, well, there's no point because everything just collapsed. Use it as a talking point to say the importance of end-use markets, cleaning up the stream, and not sending our waste problem somewhere else. Talk to your materials recovery facilities, see what type of education opportunities they have, what challenges they're having. And lastly, I really don't think there's any that there's any reason to change programs based on what I'm seeing right now. We've been to these commodity prices before. We're seeing them actually climb back up right now, or at least stabilize, I would say. So I don't think it makes any sense to stop or change and tell your residents or businesses to stop sending material there to your program. Let's see how this plays out over the next few months. Okay, next slide, please. So what does Xi Jinping mean to you? Again, keeping it clean. It's not just about dressing those bales anymore. It's about education all the way through the supply chain. And even more important with the shift to single stream recycling, where everything goes in, and it almost encourages people to be lazy and put more waste in the bin. It just makes it all the more important to have a strong education program. Pricing roller coaster will continue, and I'm not seeing any reason to panic at this point. But because ultimately so many of us know that recycling was never able to survive on just commodity prices. There's a lot of cost to picking it up at the curb or at the drop-off, taking it to a facility and processing it. And then lastly, knowing your role about where you are with markets, education, talking to your hauler, how you talk to your local officials, and making sure that your family member knows about not putting so many contaminants into the recycling bin and why it's important. Those are all important. And then lastly, well, probably most importantly for you on this call is to continue the conversation, making sure that you're able to share experiences, and then also share some resources, educational resources and knowledge across your program so that you can begin to work as a region to educate your residents and work with your MRFs. So let's end there. Next slide. There we are. There's my contact information. Feel free to give me a call. It rings to right here. It's in my pocket almost all the time. I'm happy to answer any question that you have. So let's dive into some questions and chat about this for a few minutes.
Great. Thanks so much, Matt. That was a great overview, and I feel like every time you talk, I learn something new too. So there you go. Good. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm unmuting everyone, so don't all jump at once. And what we'll do is at the beginning we will just have some question answer based on the content that Matt provided, and then we'll move more toward program-specific questions and discussion.
Yeah, I did notice that some people had some echoey things happening, and sometimes I've noticed my personal experience has been either volume was turned up too loud, or you were working through your phone and your computer at the same time. If you had dialed in and used your phone or your computer, so you need to mute your computer audio if you're going to be using your phone, just so you know, in case we start getting some echoey things coming. I look tanner in that picture, don't I? I think I need to go get some sun. Hey, let's jump either forward or backwards so we don't have to my face on there twice. Actually, jump forward. Go forward a few slides because it's a pretty picture, I think.
There we go.
Dar,
there's our recycling team.
Hey, Dar, are you on the phone?
I am.
Can you give an overview about what you're experiencing? You said you talked to Nick yesterday. What's the story there?
Yep. We're not having a problem or mixed paper, and frankly, one of the changes that a lot of MRFs are experiencing, we've experienced it too, is we're only mailing or processing one grade of paper, and it's a mixed now. We don't do O&P or old newspaper anymore. there's not enough in the stream, and the cost of trying to sort it out doesn't justify the value of what we're getting on the commodity side. We are moving all of our paper. In fact, last week we transported 14 semi-loads to Pratt in I think it's Pratt in Indiana, the mill down there. And we are doing that because we have a contract. We anticipated the issue. We've been working with our broker, which is Padness. If it wasn't for that, we might have a bigger challenge in moving the paper. The biggest issue for us is we're not seeing, and I don't have the real time amount, but the prices are down. We're not getting as much. So what we've been told is that a large market like Chicago, who would have been moving their material internationally and offshore, is now moving their material domestically, which depresses the price because there's more in the market to buy. But because of relationships and because of that contract, we are moving it all, but we're just not receiving as much on the.
Yeah, for sure. I've been hearing a lot of that. And I think that, if you take a look at that article that I posted in the one slide, you can just go and search for, I don't even know how you say it, Wapakoneta, Ohio. I'm going to say that. That's where the Pratt facility is going. And Paul England from Pratt is doing a lot of work right now, trying to staff up and get ready to go for this facility. And so they're out there sourcing even more material. And so they really, I am pretty confident we're going to see that price for mixed paper start to climb back up as as they break ground this spring on that facility. And we all know that they're going to be looking to go into some longer term contracts. I think the facilities to source their paper, I think the facilities that know that are paying attention are going to be, and these are really the processors, not the local programs. So Jill or probably Sarah, you're going to be working through your MRF. It's really going to affect them more than it would affect the local programs. But it's nice to know that ultimately the pricing is going to start to stabilize, I believe. And of course, that's all speculation. Something else could happen. India could do the same thing China is if they wanted to, and as that just so you know, I didn't mention it, but a lot of the material is starting to squeeze into those other markets, which kind of makes me sad, I should say, because instead of doing what we need to do to invest and clean up the stream and do like what Dar and County just did, investing in new, I think you said you were doing OCC sort line and making sure that you're stopping your line to get those plastic bags off and make the material clean instead of doing your maintenance and due diligence. People are squeezing it into the bale and sending it to a different market other than China, which doesn't help anybody at the end of the day. It's kind of a waste of greenhouse gases, time, money somewhere if we're going to be sending materials that aren't ultimately going to be recycled into a hole in the ground in China or Indonesia or India.
Well, the quality of the mixed paper bale is critical. I mean, I would be open in saying a couple of years ago we were having some challenges in the quality of our paper. We dress our bales too. Everyone does. But they do inspect the bales, and again, a couple of years ago we were having some challenges, but we changed some of our processing labor around, and we've added more technology so that we're consistently sending good product. Because if you get out of not sending good material, they cut you off, and then that becomes very problematic. And they're serious about it, so you've got to pay attention.
Yeah, I don't want to dog on anybody for dressing their bales. It just has recently become something that I've been thinking about as a way to, it's a signal that we're not able to get that material out, but we want our stuff to be able to get past the border. Yeah, I think that's just evolution of the process. So anybody else have any comments, questions?
Yeah, this is Jim Brown. I got a comment. What's going to happen, the people that can use this material here in the United States, their advantage is that they're going to have the advantage of dictating price more now, because they're not going to have to compete that much with the international market. And even if they can also demand a cleaner product too.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think that people in this country that could actually use the material, they would not use the same material that we've been shipping to China, and they're gonna demand a cleaner waste stream too. And I know that MRFs are the easy way out. You just dump everything into one bin and sort it out at the end. But I think that it's going to make a big potential for source-separated systems. And as small and as Mickey Mouse is our recycling unit here in Hastings Township, we have a waste stream that you could basically eat off it. It's that clean. I wish I had more volume, because at that point, it would even be better. So I think for the source-separated systems that have a very clean waste stream, or could have it, you're gonna have the advantage over the MRFs that are running the contamination rates that they are.
Now, let me respond to that, Jim, because I think one important concept is that there's not a one-size-fits-all for recycling programs. It depends on your community, your scale, what your goals are. I am a strong advocate of moving to single stream, because I think people are lazy, and I think people want it easy, and I don't think people want to think about it. And I think that if you look across all populations, you have to make it so that you can get the most material for the least amount of cost. And right now we're faced with increasing our costs by cleaning it up at the MRF and increasing education, where those are where we had the cost savings really, because of efficiencies of collection. So we had the cost savings, but we didn't put those cost savings from collection into, in all cases, into education. And so that's a two-part answer. One is, yeah, a source-separated facility or a source-separated collection program like yours is certainly has its reasons why you would want to do that. As they grow and as you're starting to get more population and more material, ultimately it's the collection costs that need to be cut down, because that's where a lot of your costs are going. And that's the main reason why single stream was taking off, or has taken off, because of the ability to move it off the curb even faster and use some of that existing collection equipment.
I think we have a use for both, but I'll disagree with the collection costs. My collection cost is zero. It would be tough for me, let's say, to ramp that up tonnage-wise to, let's say, the MRF in Grand Rapids. But
and I think that is a good point, as far as Matt was saying, the variety of programs that we have here in West Michigan. And a lot of it, our system is created to some extent, and every day it's growing and shifting and changing based on, residential participation and what opportunities we see and new ideas and growth that come out of new leadership and, just viewing opportunities. So I think this is a really good point to shift more into talking specifically about what exists in West Michigan, talking about what programs they're seeing. We heard from DAR regarding Kent County and the MRF operation that manages much of the material from the Grand Rapids region all the way out to the Lakeshore and beyond. Can maybe we hear a little bit from some of the folks in the southern portion of our region? I know Sarah Kelly has a unique operation in Calhoun and has some thoughts on this. Sarah, would you like to share what you've been seeing? Maybe share some ideas as far as collaboration or efforts that may be of assistance to you in moving forward.
Well, right now our biggest challenge that we've been working on is trying to get Revital to understand how brokers work in Michigan. And so I did have a message from Revital that they were going to be talking with Jill Brown again today. But Revital doesn't quite understand that like municipalities and counties have contracts. And so we're kind of under, binding contract that we have to move our material through the broker. And they want to work directly with the county and not through the broker. So that has been like a big challenge for us to overcome because our material started to be thrown away and not actually get recycled.
From your current collection program, not through Revital though.
No, not through Revital, but through the broker where it was going. So we've been struggling with mixed plastic and then also with glass, that they can't move the glass and the mixed plastic right now. And so that's what I'm just trying to get that connection made between the broker and Revital and try to help out not just my program, but all the other, programs out there that are moving material through Metro to make sure that we can get it recycled and not have it end up in the landfill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say we've been making some good progress there, Sarah, and I want to thank you for all the work that you've done talking with Jill and working to find a solution there. I've talked with Revital a couple of times about this, and I think we finally got Jill and Revital talking. As far as I know, we have. I asked Jill to give me a call and say if you need me to get you all on the same call, I can make that happen. Because I explained some of the challenges there. And I'll tell you, Revital's ready to go. I mean, they're ready to start working with Jill. There's nothing preventing it. So I think it's a success story, personally, that we're able to bridge that and make that connection. We thought that they weren't even interested in working with them, and it was really just a miscommunication more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they just have to understand a little bit better how things work in our system, and hopefully we can get that sorted out. But Terry was talking with her today, so hopefully that'll get taken care of.
That's great.
The other thing I've noticed, I was going to just say that I've had a real problem with my OCC pricing dropping drastically each month. And like right now, I'm only getting like $55 a ton for my material. And like a year ago, it was like $120.
It is amazing when I think slide I think forward. Is it forward? One slide, two slides, Katie? Because there's that is a graph of OCC prices. It happens to be that I used as my example. There it is. I mean, we're when we look at last April, May, March was $185 average across the region. And then I can't see what it is in the end because my screen's in front of it, but you can just see it dropping. The interesting thing is we're still, we're about where we were when we came out of the, really, if you look farther back, we're about where we were after we crawled out of the recession. So we're not to recession levels yet. There were a couple of months there that some of the commodities like OCC were threatening to drop down pretty low. But I, like I say, I think it's going to be a slow climb back out, but we're going to only be climbing back up. I'm pretty confident in that. But it's scary. I mean, all of a sudden you think you're getting $185 and then all of a sudden you're getting, 55. That's a huge change in your budget. And so it's
Yeah, I got a comment on that. Going back to brokers, if anybody had 40,000 pounds, you can skip those people and you can go right to the mill. And maybe the answer to some of this is some of the smaller entities like myself or Eaton County or Ionia combine our material and literally aggregate 40,000 pounds or more and literally sell it right directly to the mill. You do not have to go through a broker. That's a fallacy. It's the easy way out if you've got a few pounds, but it's not totally necessary, people.
Well, I think that's true if your county doesn't have a contract that specifies it. And yes, Jim, there's definitely some regional opportunity behind that.
And that's exactly what I intend to look at, because the long run, there's going to be a big opportunity there.
Let me just say this, that there are advantages and disadvantages to anything. And I would say that what I've seen in my experience is those that have strong relationships and contracts with either brokers or more rarely end use contracts. I think we're going to see some of that come up with Pratt and maybe Revital too, but I don't think so on the plastics. But if you don't have those relationships and contracts through brokers and you're just at the whim, you're gonna be the first to get shut off. So you're gonna ride the highs and you're gonna flounder in the lows, and working with contracts and brokers kind of even that out. So it really depends on how your program is built and what your ability to have those flexibilities in pricing are going to be. So, yeah. So I think I just saw a question come in, right? Rosemary?
Yes.
Yeah, I can talk about that. Yeah. So she asked about the fire in Calava. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I was texting back and forth with Andy Gale last night, and it looks like it's not as bad as it looked like on the news. I thought it looked like total loss to me when I saw flames coming out of the side of the warehouse. But that fire that they had yesterday looks like it was contained to the loading dock, from what I can tell. I'm sure they're doing more investigating today, but bad news is it's going to shut down mattress recycling, at least for the near term. We were just recycling specialists. We were just sending some notes around, and it looks like they were the only game in town at this moment for mattress recycling. So if anybody knows of anything else, we will let you know through Katie will let you know. If something opens up and what the long-term plans for that is.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Matt. So let's keep the conversation flowing. We have an opportunity here, lots of folks from across the region, to talk about some of the things that we more directly touch. Matt pointed out that we all have a role in the system, right? So let's talk a little bit, we have Dar here from the MRF perspective, who services many of the programs that are involved in this call. Dar, if you could send, I guess one message through to these programs, one item for an education highlight, or just something to ensure that they know or share with their residents, would there be anything specific that you would say?
You probably caught him off guard, Katie.
You can think on it, Dar. Take your time. We have a number of programs.
I'll answer for him in his place, because I kind of know.
Okay.
I mean, I know what I would say if I were him. You know, we have a shared responsibility to make sure that the material that's coming to the MRF is of the quality that's going to make it all the way that, you know, into a bale at the end versus into the compactor at the end, and making sure that each of the communities that are using that MRF are adequately and uniformly educating their customers with signage, with outreach, with newsletters, with emails, with Facebook posts about what goes in the bin, what doesn't, how to prepare the materials is only going to help him in the long run, make the facility not have to increase their costs, which ultimately come back to us in either decreased decreased commodity value, decreased revenue share if you have that in your contracts, or just increased cost, meaning they can't upgrade the facility and maintain it. So that's what I think the message is. We all have a shared responsibility in that, whether it's state of Michigan, DEQ, whether it's local government. And so I think that that's a really there's an opportunity here for this group to do some collaborative outreach to the communities to get the education out. That's my answer.
Yeah. Do we have interest from the group in pursuing something of that nature? And if so, what types of resources do we need and what resources are available? I know that each, to some extent, each county has their own individual education resources. We here at the DEQ can, provide support for this. We have the ability and capacity to develop materials based on those needs and share those resources. Is there anything in particular that any of the programs on this call have thought to themselves that would be very helpful to me? I wish I had this tool. Any thoughts on that? Because someone on this call may have it.
Yeah, I got a comment, Jim. Let's take glass. That seems to come up all the time, no matter who you talk to, whether it's single stream, source separated, or whatever. The people that use our unit, that's the single biggest, most question I ask. What do I do in my glass? And without taking a half hour of their time telling them why we can't take it, I basically say at this point, take it to the landfill, because that's where it's going to wind up normally, unfortunately. And I think that there ought to be more time and energy, and not to mention money spent, let's say at the higher level, and I'll pick on the DEQ today because they're good sports, to really get serious about the end use of that particular product and how we could collect it and economically transport it. It's like my plastic. I can save $500 a month if I would give my plastics, my mixed plastics, to Revital Polymers. I could save that much money, but I don't have that much plastic that I can do that with. If I had 40,000 pounds, they would take it in a heartbeat, and at that point, they would probably even actually pay me for it. But right now, simplistically, I can save that much money by giving it to them rather than to the MRF in Grand Rapids.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Let me respond to that real quick, because I completely agree that glass has been a challenging market that we've been dealing with. We've heard there has been some movement in the region, opening up those markets. There was about a year, this time last year, it looked really bad for glass. We were seeing programs starting to see the need to cut it. I would say there is still a significant portion of glass that is making its way to landfill out of the collection programs. which frustrates me. At the same time, there's a lot of glass that's making its way down to strategic materials or over to to recycling, to glass recyclers. The other thing about our glass market, just so we're all on the same page, is Michigan is strangely challenged because of the deposit law. That supplies, that makes a pretty darn clean stream of glass that's feeding those markets really nicely. And to have MRF glass compared to a deposit law glass, it's a whole different story. So our end-use markets are really dependent on that deposit law glass and don't really want to have much to do with the MRF glass. So that's an interesting dynamic that's happened because of that, making the end-use market development all that more challenging, which is strange because we're getting more glass out of Michigan than probably any other state. So we have to be proud of that, but also recognize that our MRF glass is really not moving very easily. So.
Matt, one tool that I've seen an example from the Michigan program that always seemed like such an excellent resource to hand out, especially on the front of residential, is Emmett County keeps a nice one-page sheet that talks about the market that each of their individual streams is being sent to, so folks can actually see my paper is going to this facility and being made into this. My plastic is going here and being made into that. Have you seen examples of something along those lines? Is that a growing resource that's developed across the state, or is that fairly unique?
It is, well, actually over in your part of the neck of the woods, there's been some work done over that in Muskegon. We did some work on where the material's going ways back. I think that you're right on, or they are right on, in telling the story of how where the materials are going. And that's what, a lot of people get excited about that and as soon as they can make the connection about where it's going, whether it's going into a car or into a chair or into a jacket, that right there is good. What's even better is it's going into a car made in Michigan, a chair made in Michigan, or a jacket made in Michigan. That is even better. So I think that could be a good plan for your group, is to come up with 4 stories of materials and be able to, everybody tells them about what those materials are made into. Doesn't seem like that would be that difficult to do, especially with a group like this.
Thanks, Matt. I think we plant seed. I'm letting silence ensue so folks can chime in.
Yeah, I'm seeing. Yeah, I'd love to, as I really appreciate being able to share this, and as things develop, I want to let you know that Katie will be sending out notes if all of a sudden something happened and, China, we did hear some real impacts in West Michigan in particular. We'll get those words out. I do want to leave you with, this is not, from my perspective, I'm not seeing any reason to panic at all. I know there's been some pretty dire stuff that's come out of ISRI. However, that's from their national, and I have not heard anything locally that's causing any reason to panic. So if it happens to be that there does need to be something to panic about, we will certainly let you know. So we can all panic together.
Good. Thanks, Matt. Well, I hope that we can keep this conversation flowing. And I did record this webinar So I will share that with the group and also with those who were unable to attend, and hopefully that will help to stimulate additional conversation. And I will include some notes, as I usually do for the regional calls. They will not be too terribly detailed because I was doing the logistical things over here, but I am going to include a few ideas that popped up during this call about things that we could do as a region to help improve our education, whether it's related to this China's national sword issue or just the simplicity of streamlining our education and working together and sharing tools, no matter what, it's of value, I think, and I think is a good idea for us to at least keep the conversation flowing on. So that, I will say thank you so much, Matt,
Yeah, you're welcome.
for joining. Yes, and sharing your knowledge, and thanks everyone for calling in and participating. And if you have additional follow-up questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to Matt or myself, and we will get you some answers.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
for your
everybody.
time.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good rest of your week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.